Modern day corporate America is a PR nightmare, let's be honest. You say the wrong thing, you get canceled. You don't say the right thing, but you manage to say something that isn't strictly speaking wrong, still canceled. Say nothing at all when the public deems that you should have said something, canceled again. And it's understandable that the climate has shifted towards a sense of political and emotional malleability, where the sum total of what most large corporations do or say can be summarized as the path of least resistance that leads to the overall smallest amount of screeching rage. It makes sense, and factoring in the concept that corporations exist in a profit-driven ecosystem, despite the incredibly complex and ultimately confusing fact that for some purposes, corporations are technically people under US law, they do not operate in the same emotionally invested way that individuals do. It can happen, but largely speaking, it doesn't. Recently, the United States has entered into a period of turmoil, to say the very least. This video is not about why that is, it's not about the effects of that reality. These two subjects would take hours upon hours of discussion by themselves. It is about the response by brands and corporations to these widespread emotionally charged events, and how those responses absolutely do not care about the cause, the people involved, or the widespread ramifications of the now rampant crime. They simply care about a perceived majority outcry. Whether or not it actually is a majority outcry is entirely separate, and they are making a judgment call to maximize their marketing returns under the current political atmosphere. Bottom line, corporations do not care about you or the causes that you support. The virtue signaling posts that they put up, the 30-second text on black Photoshop creations that state their expected support of a cause that in reality, as much as people love to condemn America, very few people actually oppose. Those actions are not noble, they are not sincere, they are a product of simple reactionary PR tactics that have been trained to always follow the path of least resistance. Alright, how about examples? Perhaps there is no greater clarity on this than the San Francisco 49ers. It might seem abstract to consider a football team a corporation, but the truth is that they actually are. The Ravens, for example, operate under the official registration of the Baltimore Ravens Limited Partnership. The Falcons are actually housed within the Atlantic Falcons Football Club Limited Liability Company. You get the point. The San Francisco 49ers had a run-in with what was effectively a precursor to what many call the root cause of these rampant riots now plaguing the United States. Colin Kaepernick, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, a quarterback at the time, decided to protest the national anthem and refused to stand. I believe he himself sat on the bench while a couple of others knelt on the field. Either way, the statement was simple. They were refusing to acknowledge the anthem in its full capacity because they believed injustice to be occurring and wanted to show their solidarity. Here's where it gets tricky. These protests, regardless of how you view them, they were a form of protest, undeniably. These protests occurred on paid company time with multi-million-dollar contracts. And again, right or wrong, individual opinions aside, the fact is a measurable section of the football audience were against this behavior and desired punishment in some form, whether that be suspension, contract release, who knows. The league effectively reinforced this. The 49ers meekly stated that they will allow him to express himself, but the landscape transformed for the quarterback that day, and he became a league pariah. No teams wanted to work with him, period, owing to the now complicated effect it might have on their own fan base. The 49ers were no different at all. There was also a lawsuit leveled in the midst of all of it, alleging that multiple teams worked together to derail his career, but the basic chain of events was protest, controversy, profits were threatened, and distance then created because the company operated with an eye towards the least controversy possible, with an emphasis on preserving fan and consumer relations to maximize profit. Jump forward 3 years, and the San Francisco 49ers have posted this to their social media: Black Lives Matter with just a still black image. This is not because the organization is legitimately in support of any activist cause. This is not because they feel a profound sense of attachment to the actual effects of the riots or the now polluted and defaced message that they originally had before people flew off the rails and started burning inhabited residential buildings with children inside to then block firefighters from being able to access the blaze and save lives. This post is simply because they want to yet again take the path of least resistance, minimize outrage, ensure maximum protection from a now growing horde of angry criminals, and maintain as much public reputation as they can. Sadly, far too many of the idiotic and gullible masses eat it up and praise their virtue, which is exactly what the post was designed to do. But how about a completely different example? Here's where I need to express that this perpetual corporate PR dance is not one that is always executed properly. They make mistakes. By properly, I mean accurately ascertaining what statements equate to the path of least resistance. And sometimes there are really obvious mistakes. Take Bristol Gin, for example, who decided that in light of this modern controversy, it would be a good idea to post this to their social media. When the looting starts, the shooting starts. Voted #1 gin by rioters for its complex botanical mix and high flammability. Pretty obvious that this one is a massive blunder. It was designed to play on the vocalized rage against President Trump specifically that is rampant on social media, as well as tie into the widespread acts of violence being committed across the nation. This was a cosmically idiotic move, and they were forced to retract the ad and apologize publicly because the outrage directed back at them superseded the outrage that they were attempting to play into. A gin company does not legitimately support crime, obviously. They were not really thinking that rioters would increase their sales because the alcohol makes better Molotov cocktails. They were merely trying to worm their way into highly charged political events to position themselves on the popular side of public opinion, and it backfired massively. Not enough? Let's branch out to what this channel typically covers, which is video games, and look at Activision Blizzard. The comparison here is staggering. Activision Blizzard is no stranger to controversy. The most notable relevant example for today is Blitzchung and Hong Kong. The chain of events was pretty simple. A Hearthstone player named Blitzchung spoke out about the injustice that was being executed against Hong Kong and its citizens, and Blizzard shut him down instantly. He was suspended almost immediately. The commentators who allowed him to do it and egged him on were also suspended almost immediately, and they posted separate apologies in the United States and China, which were completely different, further underlining exactly how flexible their policy positions actually are. And there were even further examples of American collegiate teams who replicated Blitzchung's protest, but were not then suspended until public outcry effectively forced Blizzard to react. The reason for this is pretty simple. China is a massive video game economy with extremely strict regulations for their domestic market. I've done multiple videos on this before with all the statistics and examples, etc., so I won't rehash all of it right now. But basically, Blizzard was faced with a clear choice of supporting a political and highly controversial series of real-world protests, thereby risking access to and business from the world's second largest, it might now be the largest in the past year, not sure, haven't checked, but the largest or second largest video game economy on Earth, or they could condemn it, shut it down, and continue down the path of least resistance. So what changed? Because these past few days, this has been popping up on their social media. The classic solidarity post for a cause ripping through the United States. But the key difference is that this one very clearly has momentum and would result in more damage not supporting it than pretending to. All of this makes no mention of Pride Month, another activist cause that gets commandeered by corporations for easy marketing points, when in reality they did absolutely nothing for decades before the government legislation began to radically change, which then led to weeks of non-stop rainbow ads and virtue signaling by all of these very same companies because they do not care about your politics. They do not care about your sexuality. They do not care about you. They care about public relations, optics, and avoiding outrage. Not enough? Okay, fine. Even better. Star Wars and Disney. Right on cue, the official Star Wars Twitter account comes out with a cookie-cutter solidarity post. We stand against racism. We stand for inclusion. We stand with our fellow Black employees, storytellers, creators, and the entire Black community. We must unite and speak out. Noble, right? Wrong. Disney has shaped its international Star Wars marketing in a very deliberate way. There are different versions of both the movie and the poster that released in China. Yet again, same as I outlined before, China is one of the biggest consumer economies on Earth, and Disney does not care about your cause when those two options are placed on a competing scale. The Chinese poster, as opposed to the American one, shows that John Boyega has been resized and lowered down so as to make him not a part of the main poster focus. Most of the elements are exactly the same. They are just deliberately taking him out of the main focal area and adjusting the visuals accordingly. This is a giant multinational corporation removing a black face from their prominent marketing material while simultaneously saying this. Sony is no different. They perceive a chance to align with public outcry and score cheap marketing PR points with shallow and meaningless posts. Worse yet, someone who individually manages their social media accounts appears to have gone off the rails and started arguing with customers. Directly above Facebook replies are censored posts about a marginalized group in China, a group that is currently enduring far more hardship than any minority community in the United States by a massive margin, but that particular religious community, well, they won't buy a PlayStation 5. Minority US Americans, they might. There are innumerable examples here. How about Warner Brothers, who is now taken to spamming all of their feeds with copy-pasted quotes while also owning, as a company, go figure, CNN. These expressions of allegiance are not sincere. They are not born of an actual activist belief system, as so many gullible social media users seem to believe. They are a shallow marketing tactic. How about Popeye's Chicken, who tweeted, "We are nothing without Black lives," and then deleted it because they started getting backlash? These are the most shallow attempts to create a tenuous allegiance for the benefit of their overall profit margins, and has nothing to do with anything else. There is no moral compass here because a moral compass is consistent regardless of how loudly people disagree with it. There is only a child with a magnet who is constantly looking around to see which way is most convenient to point the needle that day. Need more? Fine. GameSpot. For 8 minutes and 46 seconds, we will stop posting on our social feeds in tribute to George Floyd. We dedicate this time to the victims of police brutality and the powerful movement fighting for justice. Join Color of Change. Text demands to 55156. Yeah, 8 minutes? Wow. For 8 minutes, you will stop posting to your social feeds. What a difference. They care so much. Furthermore, with a violent wave of criminals sweeping through major US cities, the speculation must be raised how many of these posts are preemptively attempting to establish familiarity and diffuse animosity so that potential damage against their own properties can be mitigated. My point is this: companies don't care about you. Their services can be integral to our modern standards of life, certainly. We should not be burning them down, obviously, but stop playing into their shallow marketing ploys, thereby reinforcing their rightful opinion of you as unintelligent drones who simply operate like a hive mind of social outrage. I know a lot of people see it. I would wager a guess that those who find any interest at all in this channel are probably cynical and contrarian enough, at least, to disagree almost no matter what, simply as a result of their nature. But far too many don't think past the 15 seconds it took for a company to post, "We care about your cause, now buy our stuff," on social media, as they lap it up and perpetuate the cycle. Basically, don't glorify a company for making shallow and meaningless posts on social media as if they champion a cause that they could not, in reality, care any less about. Because it's one of the easiest ways to cheapen that cause for corporate gain. When half of these protesters and rioters right now seem to be directly against that kind of behavior in the first place. I'm not saying that people can't support these causes, people can do whatever they want, but deluding ourselves into believing that these companies do, on a whim, suddenly, when the rubber hits the road, and worse yet, rewarding that, it just degrades all of it. That's it for today, though. If you want to support, there's links down below, merch, Patreon, Twitter, another YouTuber to support as well, but I'll cut it there and stop rambling. As always, thank you all for watching, and have a nice night.